Hello, this is Francisco and you're watching Whaaat? The show where you can actually replay what I say in history class. Believe it or not, I've taken a few history classes in my day. And even in elementary school, teachers talk about countries and nations and states and communities without bothering to tell you what those things are. Years later, I know they don't tell you what they are because if you try to do that, you will inevitably piss someone off. What we're gonna do here is go over a few extremely general definitions of these concepts and then make some gross oversimplifications of the debate surrounding them. No community, nation, or state is the same as the next. So this exploration of concepts will not cover all cases, but it will allow us to navigate examples more effectively. So, a community is a group of people that identify with each other without necessarily knowing each other personally. For example, imagine you are a princess and you run into the only other princess in a crowd of common people. Hey girl, hey! What counts as a community? It depends on who you ask. McIntyre and Taylor, for example, argue that a community needs to share a system of beliefs to count as a community. This means liking each other isn't necessary as long as the community can agree on how certain things, like the government, should work. Dworkin, on the other hand, says that a community only exists where members of the community share a commitment to the other members' well-being. This means that maybe agreeing on what language to speak or what type of government to have might be less important than everyone being friends. Regardless of which explanation you side with, and there are many others, understanding what a community is matters because communities are where countries are created. Now, what is a country? The usual definition says a country has to have four things: a specific territory, a stable population, a government, and diplomatic recognition from other countries. But in practice, this just basically tells us that a country is whatever other countries say it is, which is not very helpful. Instead, let's focus on nations and states. A nation is a group of people with a shared cultural identity. What counts as a nation? Depends on who you ask. A common view in the 19th century was that speaking the same language was what made a community into a nation. This means, do we all speak French? Let's be France. Do we all speak German? Let's invent Germany, and so on. Another view is that a nation may be a type of community where people identify with specific cultural elements. For example, if you're Mexican, you identify with a specific national anthem. You recognize a specific flag. You probably freaked out when a very specific Miss Universe won the title.
First runner-up is Jamaica, which means Mexico. You are Miss Universe 2010.
And you might ask for a very specific Thalia song when you're partying abroad.
Caballo, bota y sombrero, tequila, tabaco y ron, amor a la mexicana, caliente el ritmo del sol, despacio y luego me manda, macho de corazón.
However, sometimes nations and communities exist without their own government, which is problematic, because imagine having to obey a state that speaks a different language than you and maybe even says you don't exist. This leads us to the concept of state, which is any type of government structure. But what counts as a state? Depends on who you ask. Generally, it is recognized that a state counts when it has authority. And for a state to have authority, it has to maintain public order, issue commands, and be generally obeyed. And this takes us to another debate. Because some states can do those three things because they have the power to make people do them, and other states work really hard to justify that they're doing these things because they're the right thing to do. The first type, de facto states, maintains public order, issues commands, and is generally obeyed because they have the force to make it happen. For example, think of any authoritarian regime or dictatorship. They make stuff happen, even if it involves killing and torturing a lot of people. The second type, legitimate states, still impose rules and coerce their citizens to follow them. But they do these things through processes that are meant to justify that these things are the right thing to do. For example, this is what representative and democratic governments do. Sure, they don't always get it right, but trying to do the right thing is the entire point of electing officials, discussing every little proposal, while taking all viewpoints into account, and so on. When state, nation, and community match into a specific unit where everyone identifies with each other and obeys the same government, we are led to believe that things work out easier. This is what we call a nation-state. And it's pretty hard to achieve because people are different. In future videos and classes, we will talk about the lengths certain countries have gone to create this nation-state they have in mind. From territorial expansion, colonial expansion, to revolutions, independence, reinvention tours. What's important right now is not to memorize all these definitions, but to be ready to apply them because every case we will look at has different implications. Nonetheless, I made you a mind map because I'm such a good person. You can find it here or in my blog. See you next time!